Hey everyone! Before we dive into this incredible story of love beyond the stars, please hit that like button. If you're excited for this galactic romance, subscribe to the channel for more amazing sci-fi love stories, and drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love connecting with viewers from every corner of our planet. Now, let's journey to the stars. The observation deck of the intergalactic space station Nexus Prime hummed with the quiet efficiency of advanced technology, its vast transparent dome offering a breathtaking view of the spiral galaxy beyond. Stars scattered like diamonds across the cosmic canvas, their light painting everything in ethereal blues and silvers. But despite the magnificent vista, Princess Zara of the Luminari felt nothing but the familiar weight of isolation pressing against her chest. She stood at the furthest edge of the viewing platform, her ethereal form casting a soft, pearl-like glow that seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. The Luminari were known throughout the galaxy for their natural bioluminescence. Their skin contained microscopic crystals that responded to emotion, creating patterns of light that were both beautiful and revealing. Right now, Zara's patterns showed deep blues and muted purples, the colors of profound loneliness. Her people had evolved on a world where communication happened through these light patterns as much as through spoken word. Every emotion, every thought, every desire was written across their skin in flowing, luminescent script. It was a gift that made deception nearly impossible among her kind, but it also made hiding one's pain a futile endeavor. "Your Highness," came a voice behind her, speaking in the melodious tones of ancient Luminari. She didn't need to turn to know it was Ambassador Vel, her constant guardian, and the closest thing she had to a friend in this sterile diplomatic environment. "The evening's reception will begin shortly. The representatives from the Terran Federation will be expecting your presence." Zara's light patterns shifted to include streaks of amber, frustration mixed with resignation. "Another evening of polite conversation and careful diplomacy," she replied, her voice carrying the musical quality inherent to her species. "Another night of being admired from a distance, like some exotic artifact in a museum." She finally turned from the stars to face Vel, whose own light patterns showed concern, tinged with understanding. The ambassador was older, her crystalline formations more pronounced, and her light more stable, the mark of someone who had learned to control their emotional displays through decades of practice. "The alliance between our peoples and the humans grows stronger each day," Vel said gently. "Your presence at these gatherings is more than ceremonial, Princess. You represent hope for a future where our species can truly understand one another." Zara's laugh held no joy, and her light patterns flickered with bitter silver. "Understand? They look at me and see something fascinating but untouchable. In 3 years of these diplomatic missions, not one human has approached me with genuine curiosity about who I am rather than what I am. They admire my light like they would admire a sunset, beautiful, but ultimately distant and incomprehensible." The truth was more complex than even Vel knew. The Luminari had certain biological peculiarities that made them simultaneously fascinating and intimidating to other species. Their empathic abilities meant they could sense the emotional states of those around them, and their bioluminescent responses made them living lie detectors. Most beings found this uncomfortable, preferring to keep their inner thoughts private. But it was more than that. The Luminari were an ancient race, their civilization spanning millennia before humans had even discovered fire. Their technology was so advanced it seemed like magic to younger species, and their natural abilities often made others feel primitive by comparison. This created a barrier of reverence and fear that Zara found impossible to breach. "Perhaps tonight will be different," Vel offered, though her light patterns betrayed her own doubts. As they made their way through the pristine corridors of the space station toward the diplomatic quarters, Zara reflected on the isolation that had defined her existence. Born as the only heir to the Luminari throne, she had been raised in preparation for leadership, educated in dozens of languages and diplomatic protocols, trained in the ancient arts of her people. But all of this preparation had come at the cost of genuine connection. On her homeworld of Lumina, she was revered and respected, but even there, the gap between royalty and citizens created an invisible barrier. Her people loved her, but they loved her as an ideal, a symbol of their civilization's greatness. Here, among the stars, surrounded by dozens of different species, she had hoped to find someone who could see past her title and her otherworldly nature to the person underneath. The reception hall was already filled with delegates when they arrived. The space was designed to accommodate multiple species, with varying atmospheric zones and gravity fields. Humans clustered near the Earth normal section, their conversations creating a warm buzz of activity. Representatives from the crystalline Zephyrians communicated through harmonic vibrations, while the plant-like Verdani exchanged chemical signals that created subtle changes in the air's fragrance. Zara entered the human section, and as always, conversations gradually quieted as beings noticed her presence. She moved with fluid grace, her formal gown shifting colors like liquid starlight. The garment was woven from threads that responded to her bioluminescence, amplifying and reflecting her natural glow in intricate patterns. "Your Highness," greeted Admiral Chen of the Terran Federation, bowing respectfully, "you honor us with your presence this evening." The formal pleasantries began, as they always did. Diplomats and military officers approached her with carefully rehearsed words, their conversations polite but surface level. They asked about her homeworld's beauty, complimented her appearance, and discussed trade agreements with the reverent distance of those addressing a living goddess rather than a person. Through it all, Zara maintained her composure, her light patterns controlled and diplomatic. But underneath the serene exterior, she felt the familiar ache of loneliness growing stronger. Each conversation felt like looking through transparent aluminum. She could see the people on the other side, but there was always a barrier preventing true connection. It was during one particularly tedious discussion about mining rights in the Centauri system that she first noticed him. He stood near the observation windows, not quite part of any particular group, but not entirely alone either. Unlike the other humans, who wore formal military uniforms or diplomatic attire, he was dressed simply in a dark jacket that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His hair was unruly, as if he'd run his hands through it repeatedly, and there was something in his posture that suggested he was as uncomfortable with the formal atmosphere as she was. What struck her most, however, was that he wasn't looking at her. In the room where her presence drew constant glances and careful observation, he seemed completely absorbed in studying the stars beyond the windows. His expression held a kind of wistful longing that resonated with something deep in her chest. As if sensing her attention, he turned slightly, and their eyes met across the crowded room. For a moment, something passed between them. Not the careful acknowledgement of diplomatic protocol, but a flash of genuine recognition. Here was someone else who felt out of place in this glittering world of formal connections and political necessities. But before either could act on the moment, Admiral Chen continued his monologue about trade regulations, drawing Zara's attention back to her official duties. When she looked again, the mysterious human had vanished into the crowd. The rest of the evening passed in its predictable pattern of formal interactions and diplomatic small talk. But Zara found her thoughts returning to those few seconds of connection, wondering who the stranger was and why his presence had affected her so strongly. It wasn't until she was preparing to leave that she encountered him again. The reception was winding down, and she had stepped onto a smaller observation deck to escape the lingering crowd and gather her thoughts before returning to her quarters. "Beautiful night," came a voice from the shadows near the far wall. She turned, and there he was, the man from the reception, now fully visible in the soft starlight. He was younger than she had initially thought, perhaps in his early 30s by human standards, with intelligent eyes that seemed to hold depths of experience beyond his years. "Most nights are beautiful when viewed from space," she replied carefully. uncertain of his intentions, but intrigued by his casual approach. He stepped closer, moving with an easy confidence that was neither aggressive nor deferential. "I meant the lights," he said, gesturing not toward the stars, but toward her. "The way your skin creates those patterns. I've been studying bioluminescence for years, but I've never seen anything like what your people can do." Zara's light patterns shifted involuntarily, surprise mixing with cautious interest. "You study bioluminescence?" "Among other things. I'm a xenobiologist, Dr. Alex Rivera. I've been researching the biological mechanisms behind interspecies communication for the past decade." He paused, seeming to weigh his words carefully. "I've read every paper published about luminary physiology, but seeing it in person, it's like watching poetry written in light." For the first time in years, Zara felt a genuine flush of pleasure at a compliment, but more than that, she sensed something different in his approach. He wasn't speaking to her as a princess or a diplomatic symbol, but as a scientist fascinated by the biological marvel she represented. "Most beings find our bioluminescence overwhelming," she admitted, allowing a bit of her natural curiosity to show in her patterns. "Most beings are idiots," Alex replied, with a slight smile that transformed his entire face. "They see something they don't understand and assume it's dangerous or sacred. They miss the incredible complexity of what you are." Zara found herself moving closer, drawn by his genuine interest and lack of formal deference. "And what do you think I am?" Alex considered this for a moment, his gaze moving from her face to the subtle play of lights across her skin and back again. "I think you're a biological marvel wrapped in diplomatic protocol, trying to bridge the gap between species that may be too different to truly understand each other. And I think you're probably exhausted from being treated like a living symbol instead of a person." The accuracy of his observation sent a shock through Zara's system, and her light patterns blazed briefly with gold and silver, surprise mixed with recognition and something deeper, more vulnerable. No one had ever seen through her public facade so clearly, so quickly. "You read my patterns like they're written in your native language," she said, wonder creeping into her voice. "I've spent years learning to interpret bioluminescent communication. Your people's light language is more complex than most, but the basic emotional indicators are fairly universal." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a more intimate tone. "Right now, for instance, you're surprised that I can read you so easily, but you're also relieved that someone finally sees past the crown." Zara felt something she hadn't experienced in decades. The thrill of being truly understood by another being. But along with that came a flutter of something she had thought herself incapable of feeling: attraction. Alex seemed to sense the shift in her patterns because his expression grew more serious. "I should probably warn you," he said. "I have a reputation for being direct to the point of rudeness. Diplomatic subtlety isn't my strong suit." "After 3 years of diplomatic subtlety, directness sounds refreshing," Zara replied, surprised by her own boldness. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the space between them charged with possibility. Around them, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, and for the first time since arriving at Nexus Prime, Zara felt like she was exactly where she belonged. "Would you like to continue this conversation somewhere less public?" Alex asked, glancing toward the main reception area, where stragglers were still making their formal farewells. Zara hesitated. Protocol demanded that she maintain proper distance from unknown individuals, especially humans she had just met. But something in his manner, in the way he looked at her as a person rather than a princess, made her want to throw protocol aside. "My quarters have a private observation deck," she said finally. "If you're interested in continuing your study of luminary bioluminescence." Alex's smile was warm and genuine. "I'm always interested in advancing scientific understanding." Now, as they made their way through the station's corridors, Zara felt her light patterns shifting to warmer hues. Anticipation mixed with a nervous excitement she hadn't felt in years. For the first time since leaving her homeworld, she was looking forward to what the evening might bring. Behind them, the diplomatic reception continued its formal conclusion, but neither looked back. They were walking toward something new, something unexpected, something that might finally bridge the gap between two vastly different worlds. The stars seemed to shine a little brighter as they disappeared around a corner, heading toward a private deck where two lonely souls might finally find the connection they had both been searching for. Dr. Alex Rivera had attended dozens of diplomatic receptions throughout his career as a xenobiologist, but he had never felt the kind of nervous anticipation that now coursed through his system as he followed Princess Zara through the pristine corridors of Nexus Prime. The soft illumination from her skin cast shifting patterns on the walls around them, creating an almost hypnotic effect that he found both scientifically fascinating and deeply beautiful. Her quarters were located in the diplomatic sector, a section of the station designed to accommodate the specific needs of various alien dignitaries. As they approached her door, Alex noticed the subtle modifications made for luminary physiology. Light-dampening panels that could be adjusted to prevent sensory overload, atmospheric controls calibrated for her homeworld-specific gas mixture, and what appeared to be specialized crystalline formations embedded in the walls that resonated faintly with her bioluminescent emissions. "Your people's technology never ceases to amaze me," he commented, as the door dilated open with a sound like musical chimes. Zara's light patterns shifted to include gentle pulses of pride mixed with something more vulnerable. "Most beings are intimidated by our technological advancement. You're one of the few who seems genuinely curious rather than threatened." The interior of her quarters was a masterpiece of form-meeting function. The main living area flowed seamlessly into what appeared to be a small laboratory equipped with devices that hummed with barely contained energy. Crystalline formations grew from floor to ceiling, their surfaces reflecting and amplifying the soft glow from Zara's skin until the entire space seemed to pulse with gentle living light. But it was the private observation deck that took Alex's breath away. Unlike the communal viewing areas throughout the station, this space seemed to extend infinitely into the cosmos. The transparent walls curved overhead, creating the illusion that they were floating freely in space among the stars. Comfortable seating areas were arranged to take advantage of the panoramic view, and subtle gravitational adjustments made the space feel both intimate and vast. "This is incredible," Alex breathed, moving toward the center of the deck where the view was most spectacular. "I've studied space-borne phenomena for years, but I've never experienced anything like this." Zara moved to stand beside him, her presence adding a warm, pearl-like glow to the starlight streaming through the transparent walls. "On Lumina, we build our homes to be in harmony with the cosmos. This is just a small recreation of what every dwelling on my world offers." As she spoke, her light patterns began to shift and flow in ways Alex had never seen before. Away from the formal reception and its diplomatic constraints, she seemed to be allowing her natural bioluminescence to express itself more freely. The patterns were incredibly complex, layers of meaning flowing across her skin like visible music. "May I ask you something that might be considered impertinent?" Alex said, his scientific curiosity overriding his social caution. Zara's patterns showed amusement tinged with genuine interest. "After spending 3 years answering only the most carefully diplomatic questions, impertinence sounds delightful. Your bioluminescence. It's not just emotional expression, is it? There are deliberate patterns, almost like syntax. You're actually speaking in light." The change in Zara's patterns was immediate and dramatic. Surprise blazed across her skin in brilliant gold spirals, followed by something Alex could only interpret as excitement. "You can see the linguistic structure?" she asked, her voice filled with wonder. "I can see that there is structure," Alex replied carefully. "The patterns are too complex and consistent to be purely emotional, but I have to admit, I can't read the actual content." Zara moved closer, and Alex felt a strange tingling sensation as her bioluminescent field interacted with his human bioelectricity. No non-luminary has ever recognized that our light speech has linguistic properties. Most beings assume it's just pretty colors that reflect our moods. Most beings haven't spent their careers studying the evolution of communication across species, Alex replied. Your people's dual-layer communication system is theoretically fascinating. Emotional undertones, expressed through color and intensity, while specific information is conveyed through pattern and rhythm. As if to demonstrate his point, Zara's skin suddenly blazed with an intricate dance of lights, spirals and waves of color that seemed to tell a story Alex could almost but not quite understand. It was like listening to a beautiful song in a language he didn't speak. He could appreciate the artistry without grasping the meaning. "What did you just say?" he asked, mesmerized by the display. Zara's conventional voice carried a note of shyness as she replied, "I was describing how I feel when someone truly sees me for who I am, rather than what I represent." The intimacy of the revelation sent a jolt through Alex's system. He had spent his career maintaining professional distance from his subjects, but something about Zara was breaking down all his carefully constructed barriers. Could you teach me to understand it?" The question seemed to surprise her as much as it surprised him. Her light patterns stilled for a moment before exploding in a cascade of brilliant colors that took his breath away. "You want to learn our light speech?" "I want to understand you," Alex replied, the honesty of the statement surprising him. "Not just as a scientist studying an interesting specimen, but as someone who wants to know who you really are." Zara was quiet for a long moment, her patterns cycling through what Alex was beginning to recognize as deep contemplation. Finally she spoke. "Learning to read luminary light speech requires more than intellectual understanding. It requires a kind of empathic connection. You would need to learn to sense the emotional resonance behind the patterns." "Is that possible? For a human, I mean." "I don't know," Zara admitted. "It's never been attempted before. Our species have been allies for decades, but no one has ever sought that level of understanding." Alex felt a surge of excitement that had nothing to do with scientific curiosity and everything to do with the woman standing before him. "I'd like to try, if you're willing to teach me." What followed was unlike anything Alex had ever experienced. Zara began with the most basic elements of her people's light language. Simple concepts like yes, no, greeting, farewell. She would create a pattern with her bioluminescence, while simultaneously explaining its meaning and emotional context. "This," she said, causing spirals of warm gold to flow across her skin, "means joy, but specifically the joy of discovery. It's different from the joy of achievement, which looks like this." The pattern shifted to vertical streams of slightly different hue and intensity. Alex found himself leaning closer, studying not just the visual display, but trying to sense the emotional undertones she described. To his amazement, he began to detect subtle differences, the way the light seemed to resonate with different frequencies, creating feelings he couldn't quite name, but definitely recognized. "I think I'm beginning to sense something," he said, after an hour of patient instruction. "It's not visual, exactly. It's more like the way music can make you feel something before you consciously process the melody." Zara's entire being seemed to light up with excitement. "Yes, that's exactly right. You're beginning to perceive the empathic resonance. Alex, this is extraordinary. Most luminary children take months to develop this sensitivity, and you're showing signs of it after a single session." As the evening progressed, their lesson gradually transformed into something more intimate. Alex found that as his ability to read Zara's light speech improved, his understanding of her emotional state deepened as well. He could sense her loneliness, her intelligence, her deep desire for genuine connection, and increasingly, he could sense her growing attraction to him. "There's something I need to tell you," Zara said during a quiet moment when they had moved to the comfortable seating area, still surrounded by the infinite cosmos. Her light patterns had taken on deeper, more complex hues, uncertainty mixed with determination. "What is it?" Alex asked. though he suspected he might already know. My people don't form casual attachments. When we connect with someone on this level, when we share our light speech and allow someone to truly see our emotional states, it's significant. It's the beginning of what we call star bonding. Alex felt his heart rate increase. And what does star bonding involve? Zara's patterns shifted to deep purples and golds, vulnerability mixed with hope. It's the deepest form of connection possible between two conscious beings. It involves not just emotional and physical intimacy, but a kind of psychic resonance that allows two individuals to share thoughts, feelings, even memories. The implications were staggering. Alex had studied various forms of alien bonding rituals, but nothing quite like what Zara was describing. Has it ever happened between a luminari and another species? Never, Zara replied softly. It's theoretically possible, but the level of empathic connection required, most beings can't achieve it. Alex looked at her, this incredible woman who had shared her world's most intimate form of communication with him, who had trusted him with her loneliness and her hope. But you think it might be possible with me? I think, Zara said, her light patterns now blazing with an intensity that made the entire observation deck seem to glow, that you're already halfway there. The way you read my patterns, the way you seem to understand not just what I'm communicating, but what I'm feeling. Alex, I've never experienced anything like this with anyone. Alex moved closer, drawn by something deeper than mere attraction. As he approached, he could feel the warmth radiating from her skin, could sense the electromagnetic field generated by her bioluminescence. What would it mean, he asked, if this connection continued to develop? It would mean, Zara replied, reaching out to touch his hand with fingers that seemed to glow brighter at the contact, that two very different species might discover they're not so different after all. It would mean that love might be truly universal. The word hung in the air between them, and Alex felt something shift in his chest, a recognition of feelings he hadn't even realized were developing. Zara, I know it's fast, she said quickly, her patterns showing anxiety mixed with desperate hope. I know we've only just met, and there are political implications and cultural barriers, and a dozen reasons why this is complicated. But Alex, for the first time in my life, I've met someone who sees me as a person rather than a princess, someone who wants to understand my people's most sacred forms of communication, someone who makes me feel like I'm not alone in the universe. Alex cupped her face gently in his hands, marveling at the way her bioluminescence seemed to respond to his touch, growing brighter and more complex where his skin made contact with hers. You're not alone, he said softly. And whatever this is between us, whatever it becomes, we'll figure it out together. When he kissed her, the entire observation deck exploded in brilliant light. Zara's bioluminescence responded to the physical and emotional intimacy with a display more beautiful than anything Alex had ever witnessed. Patterns of every color imaginable flowed across her skin, telling a story of joy, desire, hope, and wonder that needed no translation. But more than the visual spectacle, Alex felt something deeper happening. As their lips met and Zara's light patterns intensified, he experienced a sensation unlike anything in his human experience, a moment of genuine empathic connection where he could sense her emotions as if they were his own. For just an instant, he felt what it was like to be her. The weight of royal responsibility, the ache of centuries of loneliness, the overwhelming joy of finally finding someone who understood. And somehow, he sensed that she was experiencing his emotions as well, his fascination with the unknown, his deep desire to bridge the gaps between species, his growing love for a woman unlike anyone he had ever imagined. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily, and Zara's entire form was glowing with soft, pulsing light that seemed to echo his own heartbeat. "The star bonding," she whispered, wonder in her voice. "It's already beginning." Alex pulled her closer, amazed by how perfectly she seemed to fit against him despite their biological differences. "Then I guess we'd better learn everything we can about each other." As they settled back to watch the stars, Zara curled against Alex's side, her light patterns now flowing in gentle, contented waves. For the first time in either of their lives, neither felt alone in the vast cosmos. They had found something rare and precious, a connection that transcended species, culture, and the dark spaces between worlds. The stars seemed to approve, shining with unusual brightness as two beings from different corners of the galaxy discovered that love indeed might be the most universal language of all. Outside, the diplomatic station continued its stately orbit, unaware that within its walls history was quietly being made, not through treaties or trade agreements, but through the simple revolutionary act of two hearts learning to beat in harmony across the impossible distances between worlds. 6 months later, the wedding ceremony took place aboard Nexus Prime, in the same observation deck where Alex and Zara had first truly seen each other. But this time, the space was filled with representatives from dozens of worlds, all gathered to witness something unprecedented in galactic history. The first successful star bonding between a luminary and a human. Zara wore traditional luminary ceremonial attire that seemed to be woven from captured starlight itself, her bioluminescence creating patterns of such beauty that several alien dignitaries wept openly. Alex, in formal Earth diplomatic dress enhanced with luminary light fibers, glowed with a soft radiance that proved their bond had indeed transcended species barriers. When they spoke their vows, in both spoken words and light speech, the entire station seemed to pulse with their combined radiance. Zara's patterns told a story of two souls finding their way home to each other across the infinite dark, while Alex's newly developed ability to communicate in light expressed his promise to love her not just as she was, but as all the people she was yet to become. The kiss that sealed their bond created a light display visible from other ships in the sector, earning them a congratulatory message from the Galactic Council and an invitation to speak at the next Interspecies Unity Conference. But more importantly, it marked the beginning of a new chapter in galactic history, proof that love truly was the most universal force in the cosmos, capable of bridging any gap, no matter how vast. As wedding gifts, they received a joint research grant to study interspecies bonding, a new ship equipped for their continued diplomatic and scientific work, and most precious of all, the knowledge that they would never again be alone among the stars. Their light would shine together, a beacon of hope in the darkness, proving that sometimes the most important discoveries happen not in laboratories or council chambers, but in the quiet moments when two hearts learn to glow as one. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed this cosmic love story. Subscribe for more amazing sci-fi romances, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I love hearing from viewers all around the world. What did you think of Alex and Zara's star bonding? Would you want to see more stories about love that transcends species? Your comments help me create the content you want to see.